Hello and welcome to Somerset News Network. Caroline Stevens. Now, Caroline Stevens, I first came across her when she was involved in UKIP, but I understand now that she's in something called Wake Up UK. So, Caroline, can you explain more about the Wake Up UK?
Well, thanks, Ian, firstly, for having me on your show, and thanks to everybody watching today. So, Ian, I didn't realise you knew of my existence in UKIP. I thought I'd buried that body a long time ago.
No, it's all on the internet. It's all part of
Oh,
history.
you've been doing your research.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, way back in March 2013, I joined the party, stood for council, stood for Parliament in 2015 up in Stroud in Gloucestershire. And I guess you've probably got some listeners from Gloucestershire on your show. I became the Brexit campaign manager for the referendum. And for 11 months, I spent up and down the country. In fact, I was in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And also I was training the activists to, work the streets, as it were, with their stalls and debate with MPs in schools and in village halls. So where I saw that we'd voted to leave, which was absolutely fantastic, I was at the count. I was a counting agent actually for Vote Leave, having worked for Leave EU. Counting agent. I just thought it's funny, we can't even see who actually votes to leave or remain. So I was very glad that the count did come in our favour. But since Theresa May was replaced Cameron, I thought a Remainer Prime Minister replaced by a Remainer Prime Minister. But as I understand it now, it's actually Serena Rothschild apparently chooses the leader of the Conservative Party and the consequent Prime Minister. Yeah, a friend of mine told me, and it's funny because, Uri Geller, remember? He used to be in the UK. He now lives in Israel, and he was interviewed on Good Morning Britain a couple of weeks ago. And he said that he's very good friends with the Rothschilds, and he's told Theresa May 3 years ago that she would be the future Prime Minister. So it doesn't take rocket science to think, well, Uri Geller foretold that May would be Prime Minister and he happens to be friends with the Rothschilds. Yeah. So, it's sort of 2 and 2. It does sort of confirm things a bit. So when all these people say, oh, let's join the Tory party and let's change the leader, it's never going to work. It doesn't work like that. In fact, choosing a parliamentary candidate to stand in election, you have to go through a vetting process. You have to tick all their boxes, but you don't know. We don't always believe what their agenda is. The agenda possibly is somebody they can be a bit like plasticine. You can be molded into shape. Perhaps they've got something on you, in fact. Because that's why when they get catapulted or parachuted into these constituencies, and then they get catapulted then into the Houses of Parliament, the whip system means that it goes against all our common law rights. They have some dirt on you, and you can be blackmailed into voting whichever way the establishment wants.
Yeah, because we know one of the whips was being interviewed, and
Tim Fortescue.
One of the whips was being interviewed, and he said, "I got my little black book."
Exactly, that was Tim Fortescue, I think, in 1974. For once, the BBC revealed its hand, and in 1974, that was about the time that Ted Heath had taken us into the EEC, and so, the rest is history. And obviously, Ted Heath lived in Wiltshire, next door to you. So it's very close, isn't it? And of course, we had the situation with Mike Veal, the police crime commissioner, trying to investigate the case posthumously. And of course, local MPs round our way were very damning of Mike Veal. But yet he was trying to be the good guy and trying to do his job. So the fact that all these MPs were putting their 2 pennyworth in and castigating Mike Veal, I think says a lot about our parliamentary system, our MPs and their integrity. Why they want to interfere with his work, I do not know.
Well, thanks to Brexit, we can now see how Parliament works, because we've normally got two parties, one left, one right. Yeah, whichever one you vote for, you end up with the same thing at the end of the day. But Brexit has allowed us to see that even the parties are split.
Well, you probably, yes, we've got the red and the blue team, and there's no difference between them because they're actually governed by the same global elites. It's the banksters, the global corporations who effectively lobby through the EU. But, you know, the actual root cause of all this is actually the United Nations. If you put UN in front of any word, it means the opposite, doesn't it? Unwind, unkempt, you know, it's the opposite, and it's not perhaps the good egg that the media would believe, because the media's in on the game as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, we know what the BBC is, you know. They talk about fake news, and then you watch the BBC and you think, well, this is fake. You know, almost every story it's spun. When the referendum was called, I did videos and blogs for the first week, and every story that was on the BBC for 7 days was pro-Remain. How bad it would be if we left for 7 days.
Well, that's a good point, actually, Ian, because have you not noticed that on the TV, programs like Sky News, it flashes up with weird music, Brexit crisis. Every time the news comes on, it's a Brexit crisis. So this has got negative connotations each time. And even some Brexiteers think, oh no, not Brexit again. You wouldn't have believed that, would you? But that's all about, how we respond with our brains to this negative energy. Yeah, it is. So you mentioned, I haven't even got to Wake Up UK. So what happened last August, I've been doing some videos. There's a film studios here in Wiltshire, and I was asked to be a presenter. And I started interviewing people in the public eye from last May. And by August, these videos were quite well established on Facebook. And I was approached by a gentleman who was setting up a website and called Wake Up. Well, it wasn't. It was called something different then, but I won't repeat it because it had connotations of a certain sector of society, which that was the only downside of the name of being the name of the website. But I was so glad at Christmas that we renamed it Wake Up UK. And that's exactly what we are doing. We're trying to unite people from all parts of society to fight the establishment. But it's about truth telling. My program is on a Monday night. It's at 9 o'clock. It goes live, and I tend to have a selection of different guests on each week. They could be talking anything from common law to corruption, paedophilia. You know, a lot of children are removed from their parents through secret court system, which of course goes against our common law principles. And it's a great show, I think. So that's what we just need to get the message out there. We have a different person on every night of the week. As I say, I do the Monday night show, and I've been doing that since the end of August. And I still do the interviews. I've just recently interviewed a couple of people, one of whom has had her children removed by the social services in Scotland. And the children, when she's been given the children back to look after for a couple of hours, her children have the eye colours have changed, which is very, very bizarre. And then another gentleman, he was talking about the corruption, the rigging of the Gina Miller case. So really, I think that one of the worst careers to be going into these days is being a lawyer, because there's so much corruption in our legal system. Of course, I don't know if people watching are aware, but the court system is actually a private corporation. Yeah. And of course, you coming from your background, you'll know far more about common law rights and rights to bear arms and the Magna Carta than I do. But I was invited to the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta in 2015. And if it wasn't real, why did David Cameron spend £1 million on the Magna Carta celebrations? I was lucky enough to go up to the Beverley Minster and hear a few speeches about our rights, our common law rights. And I think this is, you know, these court cases, this court case going through at the minute about Article 50. I mean, Article 50 should never have even been triggered. We should have simply repealed and made null and void the act which allowed us to be taken in the first place, which was the European Communities Act, 1972. We were taken in on the 1st of January 1973, and you see why they didn't allow us to vote, and you probably remember, they didn't allow us to vote because they'd done a questionnaire before then, and it was, people have voted 2-1 not to join. So they didn't want to ask us. Yeah.
The first time I voted was in the first referendum, but that was for a common market. And it all sounded wonderful being in a common market. Didn't seem any problem with it. Worst mistake I ever made in my life, I put my hands up and I tell everybody I am very sorry that I voted yes. But I went on the information that I was given.
Well, Ted Heath you know about the Lord Kilmer letter?
No.
Right, okay, my gosh. So in 1960, Lord Kilmer was the Chancellor at that time, and he had written to Ted Heath to warn him about taking us in to the EEC. He said it basically went against our Constitution. The Bill of Rights of 1689 does not allow us to be governed by any foreign prince, prelate, or power.
But the problem we've got with that bit is that it's not actually an article within the Bill of Rights, it's in the oath. And it says AB, whoever you are, I think it's AD it says, that you bear allegiance to the crown and that you chastise the Catholic Church. There's a lot about the Catholic Church in there being an evil organisation. And also that no, as you said, prince or kingdom should have rule over this land. Well, if that's in the oath, how do MPs, if they want to be an MP, they have to take the oath that's in the Bill of Rights. Now, I can understand, as we've now got the Catholic Recognition Act, that part of the oath can be taken out. But you've still got submission to the Crown, to support the Crown. But the part about no foreign power having jurisdiction over us, they do not say anymore. Because what they did is they brought in the Oaths Act. And the Oaths Act hadn't actually got the oath in it. You read the Oath Act online.
What year was the Oath Act?
Might be 84 or 94. It's recent. It's not in the past.
Oh, but basically, when we were taken in on 1st of January 1973, the Oath Act hadn't been passed by then.
No.
Right. So basically, we couldn't have been taken in. But I'll read that Oath Act. But I mean, you know, everything they have done since we were taken in has been contrived for further integration with the EU, because a lot of people aren't aware there was a House of Lords Act in, was it around 2000? And it basically removed, when the barons were not happy about signing of the Treaty of Nice, which meant further integration, the whips were getting worried because there's also whips in the House of Lords as well. So they did a trade-off with the barons, and they removed a lot of the hereditary barons.
That's right.
And reduced the number to 92. So then, of course, since then, they've been stuffing the House of Lords with cronies attached to the political party system.
But the
So,
question is life peers, which is what we've mostly got now, are life peers legal under our constitution? I don't know the answer.
no. But the thing is, the peers are supposed to be, they represent us, really, because they're supposed to be the checks and balances on the MPs and what they're doing in the Commons, aren't they?
Yes.
So you can see how it's all happened so gradually until the present day. So were you aware that 4 barons actually went to see the Queen in March 2001 and gave her a petition about us? Because, right, okay. So a quorum of barons got together, I think about 25 barons, of which 4 presented this petition to the Queen and asked her to stop what was happening in this country. And she has 40 days to answer. And on the 39th day, she basically didn't give any help to the people at all.
Yeah.
So, the thing is, people say, well, maybe she didn't get the message. Maybe it's to do with her advisors. Who knows?
Yeah, but who's her advisors?
They're people from the Fabian Society, aren't they?
No, her advisors are the Privy Council.
Right.
The Privy Council is between Parliament and the Crown.
Right, so the Privy Council has 300, including Angela Leadsom, I believe, and Theresa Villiers, and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers.
Yes.
So we're in a mess then, aren't we?
It's a lot of the power that is wielded is through the Privy Council. Because when you have an act, the act has to go to the Privy Council before it goes to the Queen. And they all have to sign off on it, as far as I understand.
So what can we do then?
We just got to keep fighting.
Well, we've got to unite, and we've got to look at the common law, because, as I say, we've got this court case going through about Article 50, but that's like trying to unpick a very bad wound and make it just slightly better. You always get, I come from a very mathematical background, and if anybody who's a scientist watching, they will also understand that you have to get back to the root cause. And the fact is, we should have just null and voided that act which broke our constitution.
Yes. Yeah,
and then we can also, anyway, any nation has the right to self-determination. No one talks about that.
If you use our constitution and believe in our constitution, and you believe that we're a sovereign state, which we should be, and that Parliament is sovereign, but technically the people are sovereign because we vote the MPs in. But let's say the Parliament is sovereign. Parliament is not sovereign as long as we stay in the EU.
Well, that now moves us on to the Lisbon Treaty.
Because, we're going to that.
We got to that.
My view is that our Parliament has no more power than a local council, because the laws that are made through the EU Commission, because it isn't the EU Parliament that makes the law, it's the EU Commissioners.
Yeah.
They're lobbied by big business.
Yes.
And that goes on to your banks and everything else, right? The EU Parliament can't make law.
No.
So we are governed by the unelected.
Yes.
And I think that's wrong. And that's why I voted to come out. I think MPs are saying, oh, it's too complicated to come out. Oh, laws within Europe and the modern world are too complicated and we need the EU to do it. Well, if our MPs have not got the intelligence, the willpower to make the laws to make this country work, they shouldn't be in the job.
Absolutely. And I'll give an example of when I realized finally that there was no way we were going to leave. I was watching the fishing committee, and there was an MP from Devon who was in charge of that side of things in dealing with the exiting of the EU. And the three guys sat there, and one guy was from Grimsby, had his own fishing business, and they had to explain the ramifications of us leaving the EU. There was one guy there that was from the Ports Authority, so they would be the people who'd store the fish. And he was just very keen to say about remaining in the EU. And I thought, that's not the question. Why, he's supposed to be giving evidence, not an opinion. So I went and searched him out on LinkedIn to find out a bit of background about him. And he basically worked for a Remain MP in the Northeast up until after the referendum. And then 3 months after the referendum, he suddenly got this job at the Ports Authority, which when a year later, he would be giving evidence to MPs.
Yeah.
So you can see the corruption.
Yeah. Well, story on fishing. A very good friend of mine, sadly no longer with it, my fishing buddy. He was a trawlerman out of Brixham. And he retired from trawling because all the boats were being laid up. And they went on holiday. Him and his trawler mates that were unemployed now, they all went to Spain. And Spain are making fishing boats. And they're watching the hull being built, the skeleton of the boat, and they can see the secret holes being built in, so they can catch the undersized fish. So our fishermen have got net sizes and sizes of fish that they can catch. Yet the Spanish are making secret holes, going out, and on the quayside, they were selling undersized fish to the Spanish.
Wow.
And nothing was ever said. He could not get the press involved at all. He tried to get the papers to go down there and interview him and to do some filming. And I said, well, have you got any photographs or video? And of course, they were only on holiday. They didn't bother. They just came across it by accident. So when they're fishing in the Irish box, they got the sonar so they know where all the salmon are, so they can pick the salmon out before it even gets into our waters to spawn. They can catch what fish they like. And they got secret holes for the fish that are undersized.
And do you know the crazy thing is, you've got people like from Holland fishing in the UK waters, taking it back to Holland to then go back to the UK. I mean, is that not criminal or is that not criminal?
Terrible.
But I tell you, I was watching a program last summer and it was about the EU now pay fishermen in the Mediterranean to fish for plastic. And I just think, there's no fish, you've decimated the fishing stocks, and now you're fishing for plastic. Do you know, I've got a friend who has invented a way of transforming plastic, including things like nappies, transforming that plastic back into its original two main components without putting any toxins in the air. Do you think any of the big business are interested in an environmentally friendly method of removing the plastic? But they'd rather pay fishermen to collect the plastic instead.
Anybody that comes up with a good idea, a friend of mine came up with electronic system for a car. And you remember the old trim phones with the keypad on it?
Yes.
Right. Oh, you don't look, you're old enough to remember those.
I shouldn't have said that, should I?
Well, the old trim phone, he used one of those, as a keypad, so you could put a code in, much like we use passwords on a computer now. But this would have been 78, 79 when we first had trim phones. He made a small computer that would run a car and run a car without a key. He was paid £500,000 for that development in might have been 76, 78, something like that. That never saw the light of day. That was bought by an electrics company that makes stuff for cars, and that never saw the light of day.
Well, wasn't the original patents office set up for certain individuals to cream off the good ideas?
Well, they reckon that's what Hillary Clinton was a patents lawyer, and would take stuff. The Bushes, Walker was a secretary for Tesla. They reckon that he took a lot of the patents when Tesla died and put the patents through, and it's way the Walker Bush family made their money.
Wow.
Allegedly.
Yeah, no, but yes, if you don't have a good idea of yourself, it's a good way of getting other people's ideas and either shutting them down, maybe offering them some money, and then shutting that, as you say, putting it in a vault and never using it.
And I think our universities are used for that as well.
Yes.
They're used as think tanks and development, and people write theses on it, and they're either taken up and bought by companies even before they start work, so that they can control it.
Yeah. Everything is controlled. The media, medicine. I mean, I interviewed a guy last year when, as I said to you, in the film studios in Wiltshire, I interviewed a guy called David Noakes. David Noakes had spoken vehemently against our membership of the EU for years and years. Very interesting, very nice bloke. And of course, he then moved into supplying GC math, which is a substance which occurs naturally in the human body. But when people suffer from cancer, that GC math isn't being produced in the body. So he was helping people. Yes, on occasions, I guess he was selling it. And it was you're not allowed to say you can cure cancer because the government protected the pharmaceutical industries by the 1939 Cancer Act. So you cannot say you can cure it. And so, but it was obviously a real threat to the pharmaceutical industry, there's two members of the pharmaceutical industry that sit on the medical council. Can you believe that? What a conflict of interest. So Big Pharma is actually sat on the council. Well, they're hardly going to likely push through legislation that allowing a chap to supply GC math and put their profits on hold.
Well, everything's got to be a tablet. Everything that's wrong with you, you've got to have a tablet for it.
Of course, of course.
I remember...
No, the NHS is a mess.
We had an old doctor in Nelsey who retired, and there was a lady that was ill, and she'd been going to the doctors, and they'd been going through different tablets trying to fix her. Real old doctor. I think he was something like 80, and he went in to help out for a day because they were short. He took one look at the lady, and he said, can't give you a modern tablet that will do it, he said. But during the war, my dad used to use this. And he gave her something totally different and cured it. But that would not be recommended by NICE. And it's crazy. It's like cannabis. They say that cannabis can help cure cancer. Yet they won't let people use it, like for epilepsy.
Yeah.
It's helping kids with epilepsy. Well, if it works, why knock it?
What about the little boy who had his cannabis oil removed from him?
I know,
at the
terrible.
airport?
Terrible.
It really is truly shocking. And I'll tell you something, you know, we look at the root causes of why there are so many cancers. I mean, these cancer charities, I mean, the Facebook is awash with people ringing the cancer charities and saying, why do you keep wanting to raise money? What have you been why haven't you discovered the reasons by now with all this money being pumped into it? But you see, we've been pumping on our soil phosphates and fungicides, and it's just destroying the food and all the food we eat. And they're not the fruit and veg, which used to have these cancer-busting enzymes, no longer possess them.
Yeah.
So we've got nothing inside our body as as resistance.
I've got arthritis in my hips, and I don't walk very well these days. And it's osteoarthritis. And I'm very interested in archaeology. And I'm a little bit of an amateur archaeologist. And I'm reading a book on Pompeii. And they've got the skeletons from Pompeii and Herculaneum. And they've looked at them, and the people were some of the men were about 40.
Yeah.
And they've got osteoarthritis, and they can see it in the bones. They found out that they got osteoarthritis because the water system in Pompeii was full of fluoride. The fluoride came from the volcanic ash from the volcano. What do we put in our water? Now,
fluoride.
Is there a connection between the fluoride in my water and my osteoarthritis? I see the connection. First thing in the morning when I turn my tap on, I'm at sea level, and the water tank is at 200 feet on the hill. The chloride that they put in the water is heavier than water, so it sinks. So when nobody's using their taps and I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and put on my tap, it smells like a swimming pool. You turn the tap on and it smells like a swimming pool from the sink. My next door neighbour put in a swimming pool and had a swimming pool testing kit to make sure they had the right chlorine levels in it. Now there should be more chlorine in the swimming pool than there is in the drinking water. So first time, 6 o'clock in the morning, I took a cupful of it, went next door and asked her to test it. It was twice the level of the swimming pool in chlorine. Because it's heavier and it sinks. Once I flushed it through, it's okay. Takes about 10 minutes. Turn the tap on.
That's very dangerous.
Yeah. Not good, is it?
No, it's not. And do you know, the chemical trails, I don't know if your viewers are familiar with chemical trails. They're basically, we've got aluminium being sprayed on us. And because of the fluoride rather, in the water, the combination of aluminium and fluoride produce a covalent bond. And that's led to a rise in autistic cases.
Yes, I'll go with that. There's got to be a cause for it. Right.
Absolutely.
Caroline, I'm going to stop now. I'm going to say this is part 1. Don't go away. I'm going to continue with this conversation. Now, if you've listened to this, this is part 1. It's brilliant talking to Caroline. She's got so much information. It is unbelievable. When we come back in part 2, we are going to talk about the Lisbon Treaty. Caroline, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.